My name is Jennifer. I'm sitting in my new condo, looking at the signed agreement on the wall, and the memories come flooding back. It was just a few months ago that my life was turned upside down, and I had to fight for what was rightfully mine. 3 weeks ago, I found out that my parents had sold our family home for $1. $8 million. The catch? They gave every single cent to my older sister, Lily. This was the same house I'd invested $200,000 in over a decade ago. When I confronted my mother about my share, she simply said, "Be happy for Lily's new start." As if my $200,000, my entire inheritance from my beloved Grandma Rose, meant nothing. But here's the thing they didn't expect. I kept the paperwork. A signed agreement from 2013 stating that I was entitled to 40% of the house's value when it was sold. They thought it was just a formality, something we did for the sake of family. Little did they know that piece of paper would change everything. One phone call to my lawyer, and an hour later, the real estate agent called to say the sale was frozen. My parents were not handling it well, but I was finally standing up for myself. To understand how I got here, I need to take you back to 2013. I was fresh out of college, full of hope and dreams. I'd graduated with honors in finance and landed a great job at a well-known firm. I was the reliable one in the family, always there to help. Lily, on the other hand, was 4 years older and had a knack for getting into trouble. She'd changed majors multiple times in college, never really found her footing, and got married young to a guy named Tom, who worked in construction. Over the years, Lily's life was a series of crises. Car breakdowns, unexpected medical bills, and marriage problems. Every time my parents would call me, "Jennifer, can you help Lily just this once?" It was never just once. I lost count of how much money I'd given her over the years, loans that were never repaid, gifts that were really just bailouts. The real turning point was when Grandma Rose passed away. She was 85, sharp as a tack until the end, and she adored me. I was the one who visited her every weekend, who listened to her stories of growing up during the war and running her own flower shop. Lily she visited maybe once a year. When Grandma Rose's will was read, it was clear where her heart lay. She left me $200,000, a gift to give me a solid financial start. Lily got Grandma's antique furniture, and my parents got some jewelry. My mother was furious. She accused me of manipulating Grandma, saying she must have been out of her mind. But I knew Grandma loved me because I was there for her. 2 months after I received the inheritance, my mother came to me with a wonderful opportunity. The family home, which they'd bought in 2000, still had a mortgage. If I invested $200,000 to pay it off and make some renovations, I'd own 40% of the house's value when it was sold. "It's an investment, and it's what Grandma would have wanted," my father said. I hesitated. $200,000 was my entire safety net. But my mother's eyes hardened and she said, "Don't you trust us, Jennifer? We're your parents." I called my best friend, Sarah, that night. She told me to get something in writing. So I asked my parents and they laughed. But in the end, my father typed up a simple agreement on his computer. It was signed by both of them, dated August 20th, 2013. I kept it in a safety deposit box, and it was the best decision I ever made. Over the next 12 years, I worked hard at my job, got promoted, and started saving for retirement. Lily's life took a different turn. She and Tom had 2 kids, Max and Ava. She quit her job to take care of them, and Tom's income barely covered the basics. And still, my parents kept calling me for help. The roof needed repairs, the heating system broke down, and property taxes were due. I put in another $35,000 or so over the years, no documentation this time, just because I thought I was helping my family. Then, in early 2024, Lily's marriage fell apart. Tom left her for another woman, and she was left with nothing but the kids. She moved back in with my parents, and suddenly, all the family discussions were about how to help her start over. In September 2024, my mother called to tell me they were selling the house and had found a buyer. On October 15th, she excitedly told me they'd sold it for $1. $8 million. I did the math in an instant. 40% of that was $720,000. my investment plus the appreciation. But then she dropped the bombshell. They decided to give it all to Lily. I was in shock. I asked about my share, and my mother's cold response was that my $200,000 was my contribution to the family. She laughed at the idea of the agreement, saying it was just family paperwork. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. For the first time in my life, I felt like a stranger in my own family. That night, I couldn't sleep. I thought about all the times I'd helped, all the money I'd given, and how it had all been taken for granted. I called Sarah, and she was furious on my behalf. She told me I needed a lawyer, and she was right. I made an appointment with a real estate attorney named Mr. Harris. I handed him the agreement, the bank statements showing my $200,000 transfer, and a copy of Grandma Rose's will. He reviewed everything and said the agreement was legally binding. As the closing date approached, my parents planned a celebration for Lily. They invited me, as if nothing had happened. I almost didn't go, but I needed to see their faces when I confronted them. On the day of the closing, I walked into the room with Mr. Harris. My parents, Lily, the buyers, and their lawyer were all there. When Mr. Harris presented the agreement, my father's face went pale. He remembered typing it up. My mother tried to brush it off, saying it was just for my peace of mind. But Mr. Harris explained that under the law, I had a legitimate claim. Lily burst into tears, accusing me of being greedy. My mother was furious, saying I was ruining the family. But I stood my ground. I told them I was just asking for what was promised to me, what I'd legally invested. The closing was paused, and the buyers were hesitant to proceed. My parents were in a corner, and they knew it. Over the next few days, the pressure mounted. The buyers gave an ultimatum: resolve the dispute in 7 days, or they'd withdraw their offer. My mother hired her own lawyer, but he advised her that fighting me would be a losing battle. Meanwhile, I sent a group email to the family, attaching the agreement and explaining the situation. To my surprise, many of them supported me. My Uncle Jack even called to say he believed me and that my parents were in the wrong. My father finally reached out to me. He apologized, saying he'd let my mother convince him that the agreement didn't matter. He promised to make sure I got my money. In the end, we reached a settlement. My parents agreed to transfer $720,000 to me, and I signed a release. I also made them acknowledge, in front of the lawyers, that the money was mine and that what they'd tried to do was wrong. It wasn't the perfect apology, but it was a start. After the settlement, my life started to change. I used some of the money to create a scholarship fund in Grandma Rose's name to help young women in finance. I also bought a condo, a place that was truly mine. I started seeing a therapist to deal with the emotional scars of the past. My relationship with my family is different now. My mother and I talk less often, and the conversations are more surface level. But she stopped asking me for money. My father is trying harder, and he's become more supportive. And Lily, she's starting to stand on her own 2 feet. She got a part-time job and is learning to be independent. Looking back, I realized that this fight wasn't just about the money. It was about standing up for myself, about finally saying no to being taken advantage of. I learned that I deserve to be treated fairly, even by my family. And I'll never let anyone, not even family, take away my rights again.